Can the Sacramento Kings become NBA contenders next season? I want to dive into that in this video. But first, a word from our sponsors. This video was brought to you by Bridges and Stones Family and Relationship Care. If someone you know and care for is struggling with their mental health or relationship, go to bridgesandstones.com and contact them for your free consultation today. One brave act today can create a better tomorrow. There'll be a link in the description box below. Now back to this video. Can the Sacramento Kings become NBA contenders next season? And somebody in the comment section in the last video said, it's not like they can. It's not like they will. So calm down. This is just a good move. Okay, a good move. Well, if the Sacramento Kings become what I think they can become next season, they're going to be likely a top 5 seed in the Western Conference. But then I started thinking to myself, well, who else is going to be there with them when they get there? Well, you're probably going to have Memphis. You're going to have Dallas. You're going to have Denver. Maybe Minnesota. Maybe Golden State. Maybe Phoenix. You got a bunch of maybes. But then when I looked at those rosters, I said, well, who is significantly better than what the Sacramento Kings are? And there's only 2 teams that I could really say would be significantly better. And I mean a tier above them. And that would be Memphis, and that would be Dallas. I actually have Memphis going to the NBA Finals next year. But I digress. It's not for this video. But when I look at the Sacramento Kings, I look at De'Aaron Fox and I say, well, is there any superstar in the playoffs next season that I don't see De'Aaron Fox being able to be just as unstoppable in the playoffs? And my answer was no. So then I said, okay, well, what's the next up? What's the second option for them? DeMar DeRozan offensively. Well, what team in the playoffs has a significantly better second option for the playoffs? Well, don't bring up Karl Anthony Towns to me. Nobody believes in him, right? Memphis, you got Desmond Bane, but is Desmond Bane considerably better than DeMar DeRozan? I wouldn't say that. Well, then, okay, let's go to Dallas. So then you have, Kyrie Irving. Okay, I could see Kyrie Irving outperforming DeMar DeRozan. So then I said, okay, let me go down the line at least to the upper tier teams in the Western Conference. Let's look at Denver Nuggets, right? They were just champion a couple seasons ago. Okay, Nikola Jokic is probably going to do his thing. I don't see Domantas Sabonis slowing that down anytime soon. Okay, got it. De'Aaron Fox. Who's going to check De'Aaron Fox? They lost KCP. So probably nobody. Okay, so De'Aaron Fox is probably going to be just as dominant. Okay, so then you say, okay, the second best player is Jamal Murray. Is he significantly better than DeMar DeRozan? I would say Jamal Murray in the playoffs performs at a little bit higher level than DeMar DeRozan. He's probably a solid notch above him. So Denver has the first 2, right? So then you got Denver and you got Dallas significantly right in their first 2 options. But then I keep going and I say, well, what about number 3? Is Michael Porter Jr. better than, let's say, Malik Monk in the playoffs? I would say they're probably on par. Malik Monk is less tested, but if you've seen this dude cook, you can kind of see he's built for it. He's built for it. So I would say they are on par. Then I go to Dallas and I say, well, who's your third option? And it's, what is it, PJ Washington? Okay, I think Malik Monk is probably better offensively than PJ Washington. Okay, well, let's go to Memphis. Jaren Jackson Jr., I would say, okay, probably Malik Monk is on par offensively as Jaren Jackson Jr. Well, who else is there? And you get the drift where I'm going with this. That when you stack this team up with their number 1, I think their number 1 is on par with anyone else's number 1 when it comes to being able to perform and dominate in the playoffs, because ain't nobody staying in front of De'Aaron Fox. So then you say, okay, you look at number 2 and number 3, you begin to realize that the Sacramento Kings, what has elevated them truly is the acquisition of DeMar DeRozan and the development of a Malik Monk as their 6th man. Because when you look at a team that has 3 potential breakout playoff performers, 3 individuals who could go for 30 in a playoff game, it begins to restructure how teams prepare for them. Because you can say, okay, let's try to slow down De'Aaron Fox, or let's force DeMar DeRozan to beat us. But then what do you do when Malik Monk comes in? And then you still got Keegan Murray in the corner over there, right? And then you got this scrappy dude, Keon Ellis, who keeps taking off and getting steals and deflections and getting out in transition. But then you start looking at the bench, and they got Jordan McLaughlin, who used to be with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So now they got an even bigger hole in their point guard position, and an even older Mike Conley that they're going to be relying upon without Kyle Anderson's point forward skills, right? And then you start looking at, you have my man Kevin Herter, you got Trey Lyles, right? You got Jaden McDaniels' brother, Jalen McDaniels, right? You begin to see a Sacramento King roster that has the depth, the talent that's going to be able to compete along with the coaching, I would say, with just about any team in the playoffs outside of maybe a Dallas or maybe a Memphis, right? And I wouldn't even say Memphis's coaching is that much better, but I would just say their top end talent and their defensive potential, which is really the asterisk that I think the Sacramento Kings have to answer if they're going to be considered real contenders, is what is your defensive potential? Can you get into that top 10 of defensive performers? Well, we did see last year when Keon Ellis went into the starting lineup that they became, I believe it was a top 4 defensive team in the NBA. Now, I know a lot of other teams were hurt, so Philly had fallen off, and other teams that were potentially going to be good defensively but didn't have their stars aligned and everyone else in line, and so they probably weren't able to fill those positions. But you're saying, okay, even if you have those teams there, right, the Milwaukee's with Giannis and them, right? Okay, let's say you have all those teams there. Can they still not finish top 10 with a top 5 offense? And that's something that I think is going to be one of the factors that I'm going to look at the most, is can their efficiency on both ends of the court maximize their potential production to be able to blow past teams? Because that's essentially how the Denver Nuggets won their way to an NBA title, is that their offense was so explosive and their defense was good enough to make their offense overwhelm you and you couldn't keep up. And then you get buried in a hole and you can't get out of it. And that's essentially how the Denver Nuggets overwhelmed people, with efficiency. And I think that that's something that the Sacramento Kings can prove the ability to do. A couple of seasons ago, when they were number 1, number 2 seed in the Western Conference, what you were looking at was a team that was extremely efficient. They had a lot of, I wouldn't even say they had a lot of weapons. Their system maximized their weapons to a maximum. And as a result, they were able to blow past the majority of teams. They just didn't have the right pieces in the right places, and they weren't quite built for a playoff run, which is where DeMar DeRozan comes in. Because he's somebody that, one, I consider him like a workhorse. He's like the running back that he's not necessarily the running back like a Barry Sanders who's going to, blow you away in the NFL playoffs, but he's the type of running back that is going to have an amazing season, and he's going to get you to a number 1, number 2 seed in the playoffs in the first place. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow De'Aaron Fox to keep his legs. It's going to allow the team not to have to depend so heavily on their point guard, on their all NBA level point guard, to actually have to carry the majority of the load for the full season. And this is imperative because once you get to the playoffs, you're going to want to have the offensive focus around De'Aaron Fox and his ability to bend the defense and to be able to maximize opportunities to get the ball out to shooters and allow DeMar DeRozan to do secondary shot creating and playmaking. Can the Sacramento Kings become contenders? I think there's a chance. I think there's a chance. You think about, is Luka going to be mature enough to come into training camp in great shape and stay healthy enough to allow Denver to have a top seed? I doubt it. I think Luka kind of is who he is, and we're going to have to bear with this for a while. I don't know if Denver's going to end up as a top 1, 2, or 3 seed, even if they're that good. Which means that if you have a Memphis Grizzlies, who I do think will end up as a top seed, along with the Denver Nuggets, I think they're going to be top 4 seed. Is it out of the realm of possibility that the Sacramento Kings could end up becoming a number 2 seed? Becoming a number 2 seed that doesn't have to see Dallas. That, let's say Dallas has to go through Memphis and one of them has to knock each other off. Now all of a sudden you have a team in Sacramento who only has to face one of them in a Western Conference Finals matchup. And then anything could happen, right? Somebody could get hurt. Somebody cannot have enough depth. Somebody can get out coached and out schemed. Somebody can just have it rolling. Because when you have an extremely efficient offense, I think that's something that we saw with the Indiana Pacers last season in the playoffs. When you have a highly efficient offense that can maximize the talent of the players on your roster, it forces the other team to have to keep up. Even if they have a great defense, you're not going to be able to rely on the defense to get you those turnovers, to get out in transition, to get easy buckets, to be able to make sure your offense maintains its pace, which meant that Indiana was able to outpace other teams and beat them in that manner. Now, I think the Sacramento Kings have a little bit more firepower than the Indiana Pacers do. But I think they have the same type of system to be able to do the same thing. And if you get them into a playoff matchup where you don't have the offensive firepower, where you don't have the continuity to be able to execute at such a high level, when you don't have the requisite personnel to slow down people like De'Aaron Fox, who is in his prime, who is looking to prove himself, if you don't have somebody who you could throw onto a DeMar DeRozan, because who you essentially need is Kawhi Leonard or Paul George or LeBron James. You need somebody who is bigger, stronger, and just as or more athletic than DeMar DeRozan in order to neutralize him. If you don't have that, he's going to eat you up. Najee Marshall is not staying in front of DeMar DeRozan. PJ Washington is not staying in front of DeMar DeRozan. Right? Michael Porter Jr. is not staying in front of DeMar DeRozan. I think Aaron Gordon might be a great kind of matchup, but then I can see Keegan Murray getting off. And I think that could be a great matchup against the Denver Nuggets. And so it's one of those things, but you catch my drift. The only teams that are really giving you the answers that you need for what the Sacramento Kings are presenting are the teams who are at the very top of the Western Conference. But like I said, in the playoffs, just about anything can happen. And if you only have to go through 1 or 2 teams that are real contenders, who knows? So can they? We'll see. I give it about a 40-60 chance that they could become a contender. 40, yes. 60, maybe not yet. I think they need a little bit more defensive pop that I've yet to see, that I will be waiting and anticipating to see. What does Jalen McDaniels become? Right? What does Trey Lyles become? Right? And these types of mixed match lineups with Keon Ellis and Jordan McLaughlin, and can they maximize what they can do shutting guys down on the perimeter and not allowing them to get all the way to the cup against a 6'10" Domantas Sabonis, who doesn't necessarily have the wingspan to turn guys away. Though I do think he's going to do a really good job, similar to Nikola Jokic, where he's just always in the right place and doesn't allow for straight line drives. And they communicate so well that they're going to be able to ensure that they are maximizing who they're trying to funnel you to and force you into. But all that's to say is it's still yet to be seen. But as always, I want to know what you all think. If you enjoyed the video, smash the like button for me, hit subscribe, the bell for notifications, and definitely share this video in your group chats. Chop it up there and get back to me in the comment section, and I'm going to get back to you. Peace.